want to welcome and thank everybody for attending today for Big Ideas Without Big Risk webinar. This is going to be a great event. And before I introduce Susan and Jim, I would like to let y'all know that if you're interested in more events from TAG that are webinars and our virtual events, please visit tagonline.org and go to our calendar and check all of them out. And now I'm going to introduce Susan Reed, founder and CEO of EdgeDweller Inc., and Jim Ferguson, founder of Ratio Labs. And they're going to tell us more about how to ramp up technology with disruptive thinking. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Susan.
Great. Thank you. So yeah, we're excited to be here and spend this lunchtime with the TAG group. And we want to share thoughts and discoveries on putting disruptive practices to work. And I'm very excited to be joined by Jim Ferguson, who, as you said, is the founder of Ratio Product Lab. We met Jim and I met about 4 years ago, I think, at an intentional innovation workshop, as a training workshop. He's an incredible thinker, is always creating, fascinating solutions. And he's here today to share a little bit about his experience in incorporating some of the practices that we're going to talk about today in his own disciplines for the creativity and new solutions that he's creating. So I'm going to talk to you just a tiny bit about, give you a quick introduction to EdgeDweller and what we do, so you have that reference. And then Jim will introduce himself, and then we'll quickly get into the agenda. So fundamentally, at EdgeDweller, our expertise is in disruptive and transformational solutions. The short story is pretty simple. We create big ideas and make them work. Now, what is a big idea? Big idea is intentionally developed to perform at above industry average solutions over a long period of time. So it has a pretty specific definition. The "and make them work" means that they get to implementation, because in our world, we're achievement junkies. If ideas are not implemented, it absolutely doesn't matter. So, and speaking of that, I personally have spent about 3 decades converting how a disruptive thinker problem solves into a repeatable process that moves all the way from inception to consensus to implementation. Fundamentally, we created these solutions in 3 different stages. Big solutions first for clients to make sure they worked. Then our clients said, hey, teach us to fish, so to speak. So we moved into training and process, implementing into organizations. And now our clients are saying, we want it better, faster. So we're moving from process into systems. So that's just a quick overview of what we do. And we like to refer to this as a 200+ brand journey to the science behind disruptive solutions. We've implemented this process and worked on it with for-profits, nonprofits, government agencies, and have used it to create and reinvent anything from dairy ecosystems in East Africa to space systems that they'll send to Mars. So it's been tested in quite a few environments. Okay, so let me go to Jim. And Jim, give us an introduction to Ratio, what you do, and then we'll get to the agenda.
Yeah, of course. Susan, thanks for having me, and thanks to TAG for hosting this webinar. I'm excited to share a little bit about what we do and then how our work has been leveraged by what we've learned from you guys at EdgeDweller. We follow a pretty standard design process, but we're always challenged with new products to come up with. So we like to find innovative solutions. And so we'll look at some research and strategic planning at the beginning of any of our developments. And I'll ask our clients a little bit more about where their product will be going in the future. But we really focus on design and engineering of consumer products, both commercial, consumer, and industrial.
Cool. Very cool. So it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of people in the TAG audience can probably relate to a lot of the work that Jim does. And so I think hopefully we can make these 2 pieces come together in a way that is informative for everyone. So, in looking at the agenda, we want to answer 3 questions, and there are a couple other points that we will address. Number 1 is, how do we stay ahead of the speed of change? Very important question. Number 2 is, how do we define a big idea and manage the risk associated with its development? And how and where does the process ramp up technology solutions? Very important in terms of, where does technology fit in this process? And this will be a really fun discussion. We're going to review our process framework for clarity. We're going to simplify it so that everybody has an understanding and a point of understanding. And then we're going to talk to Jim about how where and how he's leveraged and adapted some of the process and practices with his clients. And then we're going to move into Q&A. Now, we'd like to have as much time as possible for a Q&A. And so we're going to ask that you post these questions. Is it in the comment section? Is that where it is?
Or in the Q&A section?
Yeah, the Q&A section, yes. Post your questions in the Q&A section. And Wolf Reichert is here with us as well. He's running the slideshow, and he is going to go through these questions as they come up, post them at any point when you have a question, and then he's going to help us organize how to answer these questions at the end, because we want to make sure we're making this more relative to the people that are here. Okay? So with that, we'll move into the first part of this discussion and sort of setting up the frameworks and the premise, if you will. The question number one is, are you staying ahead of the speed of change? And I always pose this question to see where people are, because fundamentally, you need to be asking this question almost every day now. It's like, are you staying ahead of the speed of change? How are you? And how do you need to change that? Because things are happening so fast today. Now, the connecting point is this. Disruptive practices have a lot to do with staying ahead of the speed of change. So this is the thing that we want to make sure. So a lot of people have difficulty with it because you need practices that can work for a large number of people in larger organizations today. So they need to be replicable. Also, we talk a lot about disruption of status quo as a new status quo. Well, that's the new norm, and you must adapt to the new norm. And then there's another point about staying ahead of the speed of change. And a lot of people get caught up in this whole ideation process. And we say this, it's very important. We say, if you have the organization that has 1,000 new ideas and the organization that has 0 new ideas are in exactly the same place. So to stay ahead of the speed of change, you have to have a process that defines and narrows down these ideas very quickly to determine which ones really make sense. So to stay ahead of the speed of change, you got to be able to gear everybody up. You have to be able to adapt to the new norm, and you have to have a process that really gets things narrowed down to the best ideas. So keep asking yourself this and looking forward to what you're doing. Now, in this whole concept of the whole theory of what is a big idea, it's very important that we really share our definition of a big idea. So we're going to use Amazon as an example for this. Now, I guess, did most people know why Amazon is named Amazon? I sometimes forget this, but it's the largest flow of water in the world. So, Bezos, he had this name, and so he kind of knew what he was going to do in the very beginning. So now in the mid-90s, he knew that where he was headed with this, and he wanted the name to reflect it, but he launched this concept with online book sales. So think of that. He launched the concept with online book sales. So this is interesting. The future state, which is the big idea, is the consumer product distribution channel. The launch was online book sales, and that was actually how he introduced the concept. Now, when he launched the concept with online book sales, nobody had a clue as to where he was headed, except for Jeff Bezos. He knew it from the start, right? Who would have thought that it would disrupt businesses the way that it has? I mean, we started with the retail bookstores. We went to publishing companies. We went to pulp and paper companies. Like, it's shut down. I can't even remember how many facilities, distribution channels, all the way to how we choose consumer brands today. So his big idea was a future state that nobody knew about until now that we're actually getting there. So the fundamental is this: a big idea has a future state that is not clear at the launch. You get to the future state with a series of innovations, and then you build that infrastructure to help you get there. So that's one way to begin to think about a big idea. Now, you could say that Amazon and a few other large brands really were the impetus behind kicking off this trend of industry disruption. And of course, with the rise of technology, it's happening everywhere: faster, better, more, et cetera. So that's where we are, with TAG. I mean, it's a huge role to play in this trend. So we like to punctuate it by saying this again. Disruption of status quo is the new status quo. If you're trying to keep up with the speed of change, you need bigger, longer lasting ideas. And that takes us to the next point that I'd like to make. In order to create bigger, better, longer lasting ideas and to keep up with the speed of change, you need a new way of problem solving. So it starts at the problem solving area. We contrast two different ways of problem solving to make this clear. We contrast Newtonian and Einsteinian thinking. So let me do that because I think if you understand the constructs behind this, it'll help you think this through. So Newtonian thinking evolved in the post-industrial era. Is really focused on mass production. I'll take the shoe, the brown shoe from the cobbler, and I need to produce a zillion of them at exactly the same quality, et cetera, et cetera. So mostly focused on incremental solutions. So the way it works is you create the brown shoe. Now, everybody has a brown shoe. We come back and we say, okay, everybody has a brown shoe. What do we do next? Oh, let's sell a black shoe. We go to the black shoe. Everybody has a black shoe. Where do we go next? Maybe we go to the athletic. We change the functionality, right? So I go to the athletic shoe, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how it works. Incremental solutions are an important way of thinking today, but because of the speed of change, if this is all you do, is to start from here and continue to improve what you're doing, not only will you lag behind in the fast-moving world, but you're much more likely to become irrelevant in the world. So Newtonian thinking has a place, but you have to supplement it with another way of thinking. So let's go over to Einsteinian thinking. Now, Einsteinian thinking really focuses on what the future will be. So it's not the next step. So if you look at the shoe, the way that Einsteinian thinking works is it uses the shoe to create the future. Okay, so that's the first thing. So let's say we put data and analytics behind the shoe, and we create as one of our future states, lifelong fashion. Okay, and you go, well, how on earth are we going to evolve a shoe to lifelong fashion? The future state, you look at it and you come back to where you are and you evolve to where you are in a series of innovations. So let's look at this. In order to launch, so we come back with a launch, which is a shoe salon, which is number 2 here, shoe salon at my fingertips. Okay. That's very easy to do. It's short-term. It gives you immediate results, and it's easy to do. So now that I send a shoe salon to everybody's home, I give you 5 pairs of shoes. You choose what you want. Now I get data and analytics, and now I can make that relationship back to fashion. So then the next stage is fashion at your fingertips. Now that I know your trends and we went a little bit ahead there. Yeah. Now that I know your trends and how much you spend and how often you buy, I put you with a fashion consultant that does that for you. Then we add virtual reality fittings and alterations, et cetera, et cetera. And you can see how this works. And we move to lifelong fashion. So I think the difference is you can see the difference in this sort of incremental next step thinking versus creating the future and coming back and evolving there. So the question that I ask you as well is, are you using Newtonian problem solving today, or are you using Einsteinian problem solving? So to keep you up with the speed of change, this is very important, and here's why. This is a slide that we call the slide worth 1,000 C-suite words. They love this one. This is when they sit up and they look at it, okay? We say it's wheel spinning versus sustainable growth. Newtonian solutions, the incremental solutions today, last only 9 to 18 months if you're very lucky. The problem is that you start, you come back to, if somebody leaps over what you're doing, you come back to the same place. So you kind of start, finish, start all over again. Start, you kind of start all over again. That's one of the reasons that it's running organizations kind of ragged today. The other way of looking at it in the Einsteinian method is that it delivers substantial and sustainable growth. So I create idea number 1, my shoe salon. People jump in, I don't care. I'm going to antiquate their move because I'm going to step number 2. I've already figured it out. Then I go, and that's the way it works. So it sort of climbs up the ladder and it gets to the longer term play. So if you look at the case of Amazon, by the time other book retailers entered the online book business, Amazon didn't care because they were already moving on and antiquating those moves. So that's an example of how it works and why this difference is so important. Okay, so this is the framework we're going to be referring back to today to keep it pretty simple. We're using the lifelong fashion. We use the shoe as an example because everybody understands it. It's easy to understand. So lifelong fashion, the series of events, how we get there. So we use the Einsteinian method. We have labeled our process intentional innovation. So let's have a look at big ideas versus low risk. Big ideas is the future state. In this case, when we talk about creating big ideas, we're talking about creating the future state. It's something that has this long-lasting growth and make sure you're looking towards the future. When we talk about low risk, we are looking at the launch. This is very important. The launch has to be designed to deliver immediate results, short-term results. It has to inform the next stage of your innovation series, and it also has to inform the validity of the overall future state. But we found this out the hard way. No one on earth, in terms of an organization that is established, no one will go and launch the big future state. You have to have something that makes it easy and low risk in order to launch it, because we tried it. So if you have just big ideas, you don't get a launch. If you have just low risk, you aren't going to have enough growth. So you got to put these two pieces together. So last little point, and then I'm turning it back over to Jim, is we are going to we have our framework that we've created. It fundamentally answers 5 questions in a series of questions. The sequence is very important. So, and we aren't going to go deep dive into this, but we have 5 questions and 8 modules. But some of the questions that you ask may have us deep diving into some of the tools. We're going to keep it up at a higher level. But just to show you one example, ideation for us is question number 4 of this entire process. If you don't prepare and get everything ready before you create ideas, it'll never move to implementation. So there's some things like that that I think are really important. So with that, in that very quick, what do we call it? The hose? What do you call it?
Drinking from the fire hose,
whatever
right?
You call it. Whatever, I just drowned you. So let's talk to Jim and Ratio about how some of these practices, which ones were sort of meaningful to him and how he began to leverage, some of this based on his experiences. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you. I think that does give just a general overview of some of the EdgeDweller processes and some of the ideas that really capture that big idea that you're seeking. With our clients, we have some professional inventors, and we also have the corporate 100 clients, maybe like Coca-Cola. With Coke, they already have an internal team that understands what their big idea is and where they're going. But oftentimes our clients who are the professional inventor or the novice inventor even, who've got that one-off idea, really need to sit back sometimes and reflect on a few of these initiatives that EdgeDweller has offered up, just so that they understand what their big idea is now, how it fits in, and where it can evolve to a future state. Do we have a next slide? Yeah, I think one of the things that, and this is going to just reference a little bit of our work and how we have used some of the EdgeDweller processes. This is an EdgeDweller slide that I was keen to share with the audience, because this is one of the slides that really helps me with my clients to understand where they are in their process. So this is what EdgeDweller refers to as the portfolio view. And in some of the workshops I've attended, we've had guests that we've, have a number of different products in their portfolio, whether these are services or physical products. And we've asked them to map along this path, where their product may be in introduction, growth, maturity, or decline. And this is just an absolutely revelation type of document to share with an inventor who comes to me and assumes that the invention that they have just shared with me is really all they'll need. And what I want to do with some of the EdgeDweller products is share with them what they really need to be thinking about beyond this initial idea. So as an example, Apple is a terrific example for this. So many people are very familiar with their products. And if you're looking at this portfolio view, you can see Apple Pay, Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, etc. And you can see where they are being introduced, growth, maturity, and decline. We've talked about in our workshops the Apple Car that may be coming out at some point. this is even before introduction. It hasn't even been introduced yet. And so there's a tremendous amount of effort that it takes a company in that early stage to research and develop and understand how that product will be introduced to the market.
Mhm.
I think it's also really important for the client to understand too that they won't be the only one with this invention. In fact, something that happened today, I got a request from a client who has a unique, one-of-a-kind idea. They shared it with me. I looked up something similar to it on Amazon, which already exists. And so just when they're thinking, maybe I'll go for a patent on this, you have to assume that you're not the only one who's come up with an idea like this. And you have to do a real deep dive to sometimes find out who are the other players in the market, what are they offering, and how will your product be new, innovative, and better, whether it's by price or performance.
Yeah, I think this is a tool that is really good when you look at, Jim deals with big companies and small companies, but for the small companies, a lot of times the idea that they come up with is really not that new and they don't know it. And so it's a really good framework to put ideas into perspective. And that's how we use it. A lot of times with big companies, we put their whole innovation portfolio views through this because they're a pipeline, if you will, because we'll find that 50, sometimes as high as 75% of their initiatives are not going to put them into the growth mode that they want to be into. So they're spending a little bit too much time protecting business. So it's a really sort of an eye opener because it classifies ideas and new initiatives in a way that they can determine, well, you really want this out of it, but you aren't going to get it because here's where it is. And it helps sort of build the future state out a little bit.
Yeah, and really for my clients with the startup initiative of a new product, this is a blank roadmap. They have no idea that they're going to have to continue to innovate beyond this first initial product. So, you ask the client what they'll do when this product comes to market, and they'll all make millions of dollars. But then they're also going to have a competitor right on their heels. And so this is also just kind of a starting place for them to understand where they fit and where their competitors will fit, and where they may have gaps between this and the next big idea that they want to have.
Okay, good.
I think I want to talk about a few other programs. If Wolf has some other slides.
Yeah, pull up.
Programs, attributes of the EdgeDweller process that we have really gotten a lot out of. One of the things was the intentional creativity, and intentional innovation was one of the things that really drew me to EdgeDweller also, just because I wanted to find out what that meant, intentional innovation, because so often innovation comes sometimes from what people just think is an aha moment or a bolt of lightning out of the blue. And really, if you work at it, you can find those ideas. You can cultivate those ideas with a number of, I would say, exercises, right? Is that the right word to use to help identify what some of those ideas are, and then help filter out some of those ideas? One of the things we first did, Susan, was you gave me a personality profile type, and you told me I was a disruptive personality, which wasn't really too surprising to me, but it did give me the confidence to know that that's my role in the development of some of these projects. And it helps me to know too, like what my client's personality profile type is. If we're both just two disruptors, we may have a hard time coming up with just a solution we can move forward with. But in almost every product development program I've worked on, there's a bigger group of people who can be participating in that development. And it's usually very beneficial to the end result.
Yeah, that's important to know on the profiling piece, who to sort of supplement yourself with, because disruptors are actually a very small percent of the population, but you need to know who to go to not do what you do, but to offset you. That's very important.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and take it to the next step and the next step.
Yep.
Our process is so, I would say, standard in many ways. What we always are trying to do is get our clients to the next step. It's a scientific method, really, where we have an expectation and we want to prove that out. It may be through illustrations in our first stage. It could be through mechanical engineering in a second stage and prototyping. I'm a big advocate for additive manufacturing, so 3D printing. And 3D printing has allowed us to really rapidly, quickly develop a product and get it into your hands.
Yeah,
So
why don't we go to this case, Jim? I think it's important. Let's go to the packaging case and maybe we can address some of those issues there, because I think that's a great example, and then we can move on to questions.
Sure. I have a client that came to me with a packaging requirement, and it was really as a result of an FDA ruling that happened in July that said that a active component in a beverage needs to be separate from the beverage, and that the user would have to put the two together. And this was just really a problem solving for the particular client's needs with the drink that they were producing. But once they came to me and I came up with a result that was either on the left, you can see a 1 fluid ounce, or on the right, a 1.5 fluid ounce shot that actually acts as an intermediary cap for them between the glass and the black plastic cap that they already had. This provided them with all of a sudden a new physical asset to their business. And this physical asset was something that could be something that they're introducing just for the immediate need, but could also go and become a big idea, really, as far as mixed in place containers. You see something that happens like with an FDA guideline, and you start to think, oh, this won't go away, and we need to start thinking about how we resolve this in an even more elegant way, possibly cheaper or in a higher volume. So we do start to look at this, building out the future state, even from just having a simple solution to start.
Yeah, I love this example because fundamentally a client comes with an idea, which is a way to mix a specific drink. And the bigger idea is actually in the container, and evolving that kind of container, because that is something those are concepts of the future. So I love that as a great example of how you take an idea that somebody brings to the table and you convert it into something that leads to a much bigger future state. So that's why I like this example. So I think, we're talking a little bit about infrastructure. I think we got about 2 or 3 more minutes before we go into this. So let's talk about a little bit, Jim, about how you incorporate your infrastructure underneath this. So how do you, problem solve and evolving from, concept number 1 to second innovation, third innovation, using these frameworks, and then we'll move over into a quick conversation about Lean Six Sigma and that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, certainly we want to respond to our clients' needs in the immediate. We want to make sure we have a design criteria that we understand that will make them happy with the result of our work in the beginning. But we're also always constantly informing them of what their next step could be. And this is just based on my experience and a lot of my experience with EdgeDweller, to be honest, that I can share with them what will you do after this? What will be your second or third generation of this product? And so that is the kind of thing that we'll start to just at least plant that seed in our clients' heads. And many times the client comes to us with that one idea and they think that's it, or it's going to be that solution for, say, the beverage that they need. But in this case, I think this container is a unique concept that could work across a number of different industries, from, powdered beverage drinks that could be mixed, or alcohol drinks that could be mixed separately. So we want to do as much as we can to kind of think through all of those aspects so that we are narrowing it down to the one we want to pursue. And then we're also really aware of what our competitors might come out with as soon as we have the initial launch.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's really important here, and this is where the technology solutions often fit in. And so this is a point that I would like to make here, is that a lot of people ask us, where does Lean Six Sigma fit? Where do other practices like design thinking, et cetera, et cetera? Once you have developed a future state and you have your path of innovations ready, now you're ready to go into that level of specificity. So typically, this is the part of the process where you interject your other more acute approaches to problem solving, like the Lean Six Sigma and the design thinking, because, and this is where technology solutions often belong. So instead of creating here I have this piece of technology in front of me and I'm going to improve it. If you understand the future state of what you're creating and you understand where you're starting from, then you understand how to create a platform in the very beginning that is going to accommodate all these different evolutions. And so that is one of the biggest impacts that we hear back from people that use this, is that they actually waste a lot less time and a lot less money, and they solve not just one problem and have to start all over again, but it's an investment that rolls out over time. So I think that's a really important point here, and it also is a huge play for the technology solutions.
And I would just say too, many times my clients really want to have patent ownership of whatever idea they've come up with. I know technology companies can't do that as readily just because speed moves so quick, changes move so quickly. So people are often kind of copying or stealing a little bit of everybody's best ideas. And so I don't really want my clients to get too caught up in the ownership of the product and trying to maintain it legally as theirs, because the world will move up, over, and around you. So really your biggest advantage is creativity and knowing what your big idea is. So just when your fast follower competitor is stealing your first idea, you are already moving on to your second idea.
Yeah, that's a really good
and that's
point.
really important.
That's a very good point. Yeah, the process takes so long today. It's almost like it almost holds you back, the patents process.
Yeah, right. And I think to your point about Jeff Bezos too, when I was on the phone with Amazon the other day, the consumer person on there said, we're allowed to deliver products to the moon. We have a contract to deliver products to the moon. And, we have no idea what Jeff Bezos' plans are.
Well, we just did a big space project, and he's telling the truth.
Yeah, he is telling the truth.
He was part of it.
So what you know about Amazon today is just what they're telling you. The rest of their big idea is still evolving, and that's really neat to see.
Yeah, this is one famous Jeff Bezos quote. I think it's really good. I just have to share it. It was that, launching in the U.S. was easy because the infrastructure already existed. I just utilized the infrastructure that exists. Space is a whole different thing. So I'm thinking, okay, he's going to reinvent infrastructure and space, and then he's going to come down back here and he's going to reinvent our entire infrastructure. So get ready. That's going to happen next.
Right.
Okay, let's go to the questions, huh? Well, so now we want to move to the part where we're answering some of your questions. And Wolf, have you had a chance to look at these?
Yeah, so I've seen a few interesting questions that I'll go ahead and share. And just to everyone else in the audience, go ahead and if you have follow-up questions, go ahead and ask them in the Q&A section, or if anything else you want to get answered, just toss it in the Q&A section and we'll get to as many as we can. One of the first questions that we saw is just a few people wanted to get a little more clarity on what you mean by future state. So if we could just go into a little more detail on what specifically a future state is and what that entails.
Okay. A future state is how you have determined with your entire process how the future will likely evolve. And you actually are looking out way ahead of where the world is now. The future states used to be 15 years out, and now they're like 5 to 7 because things change so quickly. So if we look at, in the case of, let's go back to the shoe. The future state for the shoe was, and we created this model about 5 or 6 years ago before it started, but we said, okay, push button lifelong fashion is the future state. Does that make sense? Is it feasible? Of course it does. With technology, the way that it's evolving, all these different tools that we have available. So a future state is what is very likely to occur in the future. And that is what your big idea is. So you look at, when you're creating ideas, you actually narrate about 5 to 7 of the biggest and best future states. And then you figure out how to get to those different future states. A future state is a big idea that will have long-lasting results that really will not come to actual maturity. You won't get to that point for 5 to 7 years on average. So it's what do you think is going to happen in the future and how you're going to evolve it? Just like Bezos, in terms of a consumer product delivery channel, that was his vision. That was the future state. And he got there in a series of very smart events that led to the future state. I hope that's clear.
Great. Yeah, I think we covered that one. I saw another question that was, there was mention of Jim being a disruptor and 1 or 2% of people being disruptors. And there were a few questions surrounding just what are the roles of each of the profiles? And can you go into a bit more detail about how the profiles are used? And
okay. That's a really good question. We started off just creating tons of solutions, and we had to figure out how to put the best teams together. We tried every method on earth, expertise based, infrastructure, functionality based, leadership based. We tried crowdsourcing, everything on earth. What we found was very interesting. Diversity of thought, we call it cognitive diversity, is the absolute positively best way to put teams together. So it is like, to what degree do I think critically and creatively? We have 6 different profiles that blend together. If you have high performers at different levels of critical thinking and creative thinking, you can reinvent anything on earth. It doesn't even matter if you have the right toolkit available, that they have expertise in what you're doing. As a matter of fact, sometimes the more expertise you have, the harder it is for you to create solutions. So a disruptor, we have critical thinkers, switchers, and we have creatives. The switchers are the people who think on both sides of their brain at high levels very quickly. They switch back and forth, and disruptor falls into that category. Every single role every single profile has a very specific role in the process, and you pull them all together so that together you have a high performing team. So we just go with companies, we profile the people that they bring to the workshops, we put them together, and we used to think we had to hey, let's support this team, make sure they get there. We don't worry about it anymore. If we have the right profiles at the table and the right tools that we're using, we can create anything. So it's kind of crazy. So diversity of thought.
And that was helpful to me too, to know that I was a disruptor in the sense that I could come in and provide some understanding, provide an idea based on my understanding of the analysis of the design constraints that exist and where the big idea may want to go.
Right.
So I usually will say, well, have we thought about this, or why don't we do that? And
Right.
that may be a big idea that needs to be evolved and figured out and planned. And at that point, I'm already not really that interested, and I'm moving on to my next disruptive notion.
Well, and that's a
I know
huge
that there's
point.
other people that are really involved in that aspect.
And that's a huge point, because every person has great assets. We call them hero tasks. And they also have things that they do that aren't so great. So I'm a disruptor also. So disruptors, they have to be with somebody else, because disruptors they just keep reinventing the world. They can do it really fast. But you may offset yourself with an evolver who says, okay, there's a zillion great ideas, but this is the best idea. Move with that one. so everybody has a very important role. And that's why those profiles were very important to us, and a big finding for us.
Right. And that helps to inform my client of that too, because often my clients are disruptor type personalities. They have a unique idea, but even after explaining it to me, they have another one. And maybe
Right.
by the end of our conversation, they have a third one. So I have to tell them, you really have to narrow it down and decide that this is the one you're going to go with and hang on to for quite an extended period of time, to earn the money back on the effort.
Yeah. So just one more point, and then we'll move on to the next question. I think it's really
So can I just chime in? We actually do have a follow-up question on what are the tools or techniques used to identify a person's profile?
We have 2 different methods. We have an online assessment tool that you go online. There's one that's called the behavioral version of the test, and you can actually go online and take the test, and it actually profiles you. So it's based on your point of view of how you behave. That's one test. And then we have another one that we call the problem solve test, where you literally you have to create solutions to concepts. And it's, we go and we look at 4 different levels of creativity. We analyze your performance in each of those 4 different levels of creativity. We supplement it with an analytical test that's very, very extensive. So we have 2 different versions of tests. One is very fast. online, and one is more complicated. The way our clients usually use those is once they start to define an expert team, they go to the problem solve, the more intricate profiles, and that's how they help to define people that are actually going to run the teams. But the other ones are pretty easy. And even when we do innovation workshops, we have everybody profile before they walk in the door, and we set them at the right table because we know how to blend the tables, and we know we'll get great results. So it works out there. Yeah. So any other questions, follow-on questions about that, the Wolf?
No more on that, but I do have, it looks like 2 more that we probably have time for.
Okay, let me say one more thing about the profiles and I'll get off. And here's the thing. The one thing that I like about it too is that there's always been this conflict between people that are highly critical and people that are highly creative. So when you do this and you outline their tasks, people actually like each other, because as a critical thinker, my role is to rip something apart. But my role is also to put it back together again in a way that it works, and I have to do it very quickly. So it's interesting how people leave these environments really appreciating each other for the different aspects that they bring to the table. So that's one thing that I wasn't expecting, but I think that's really.
No, it actually defines collaborative in many ways. I mean, I think collaborative means that everybody gets together and we're working on something together.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily mean you will get collaborative level results. And when you have a certain group that is willing to bounce ideas off or make ideas better in the group, you actually feel like you're getting somewhere with this collaboration.
Yeah.
We really like to do that with our clients.
Very cool.
Great. So I have two more good. There's a lot of questions here, but I have 2 more that I think we have time to get to. And I'm gonna sort of paraphrase this one, so bear with me here. So the question is, how do you distinguish this approach with what others might call the product market fit model, in which you iterate between market analysis and forecasting a product/technology stack-up analysis?
Okay. I think I can remember that. That particular process typically happens in the stage that we showed you where Lean Six Sigma and design thinking occur. And let me explain just a couple of the fundamentals, because this could be a very lengthy discussion. But that level of analysis would occur as you move into, as you sort of define the future state, and as you've already defined, kind of you put your innovation series together. And then that kind of specificity is very important to determine the best way to launch the first innovation, the second innovation, the third innovation. It also will change the definition of those innovations a little bit because of the specificity. Now, here's one thing that we recommend against, and I want to tell you why, because this is relative to a lot of that. If you start this process with research, we spend a ton of time looking at research, and research asks people questions to get their point, and it gets their point of view. Very few people think futuristically. So if you just respond to research, in most cases, you are only going to respond to what is the next step that these people can identify. So how we begin to restructure research was we wanted to understand, once we understand what we're doing, we want to understand, are they going to align with this or not align with this? And we wanted to understand how to package and position things so that they would align with step 1 and go to step 2. We found early on that if you just do research, the really cool future state ideas are actually put out because they're called outliers. And the easiest example on earth is that the banking industry, we used to do tons of stuff in the financial industry. They would come in and they would say, what do you not like about a bank? Well, I don't like standing in line. So they did all this infrastructure work. And what people really wanted is they didn't want to be in a bank at all, but nobody asked them that question. So that was what was right in front of them. So I think maybe you may have a follow-on to that. I'm not quite sure I answered that exactly, but I'd be happy to discuss that further, because we talk about things like this all the time. It's very, and everything has a role, but it's just kind of where you put it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to chime in. We do have, we're running a little bit low on time, so I want to move to the next question. Oh, great. So that was a good answer. Great.
Oh, good.
Well, we're glad that.
Yes. I'm not clear. I'm a disruptor too, so sometimes I'm not clear. Jim can relate.
So yeah, I just wanted to point out that we will share some contact info. So if you have any burning questions that come up after the Q&A, reach out. We'll be happy to answer those offline. And the last question that I wanted to make sure we get to, I think Jim will have a great answer, is how has what's going on with the coronavirus right now impacted how you're using these tools?
Okay, the coronavirus. Okay.
Yeah, coronavirus. Yeah, that has been, obviously on the top of everyone's mind. It's the main thing we're all kind of focused on right now. For me, I saw right away that my across the street neighbor is a surgeon at Kaiser Permanente, and he was microwaving his N95 mask every 5 days, or to make it last 5 days, I should say. And I was horrified. Yeah, he'd microwave it to make sure it didn't have any virus on it. But it was shocking to me that in our modern day healthcare system, he wouldn't have these disposable products in volume. I was kind of shocked by that. I initially started by just seeing what was online. There were some guys in 3D printing making masks with filters. And then I also found that there were some face shields being produced by Prusa and Grass Milk. Both companies were putting out files. I tried both of them, and I thought a couple of them had flaws. And I came up with my own version. This is my version of a face shield I'm wearing right now.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's a semi.
Does it come in colors?
Yeah, and in fact, this is a happy accident. The happy accident of colors, and this one's white with a clear frame on it. I have them in pink, black, blue, yellow, and a number of other colors. And that turned out to be really important because when I'm handing them out, I'm handing them out in packs of 5 or 10 in multiple colors so that the nurses and doctors who use them can find theirs pretty readily and know that theirs is yellow and blue or green and pink.
So how do you convert that, Jim, into, how do you convert this sort of one-off idea, which is a great idea, of course, but how do you use that to move you into the future? Have you thought about that yet?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, this is kind of the real-time research that I'm getting that I wouldn't have normally done or couldn't have found these answers. And this actually started through Nextdoor. So it was responding to my healthcare worker neighbors in need. And as a result, they all informed me of what was going on at their hospitals and how they were prepared. I met a nurse who was an independent contractor who was going to go to New York and really she needed to bring her own equipment. So while we're kind of solving an immediate need right now, it's made me think about what is that future state? What does it mean to have personal protective equipment,
right.
Especially when it's not, it's personal on you, but you don't personally buy it in many cases. The hospital provides it to you, or you have to go to a neighbor down the street with a 3D printer to make it. That seems shocking to me. So beyond adding, new technology or cool features to it, I just kept thinking about the idea that I would like to have a PPE bag that is essentially all the PPE that I would personally need, from masks to face shields, gown coverings, and it's in my size and it's in a bag and I can order it or pick it up anywhere. Cool. And I think that idea is going to go way beyond what we are doing just now to meet the immediate need.
Yeah. So one thing that in terms of some of our discoveries, because coronavirus is a disruption. It is, and the good news about that is that you use the same disruptive practices to create disruption as you do to respond to disruption. So we kind of went through our process and we looked at it and said, okay, the only thing that's different is that we need to have another look. We use genius thinking patterns and emerging trends as part of our ideation toolkit. And we went and we created 3 new trends that needed to be added to our emerging trends, because the emerging trends are things that are going to be part of the solutions of the future. And so we went and created that. And it's very important. I think one of the biggest issues, quite frankly, in this whole coronavirus thing is that use these solutions not just to recover and pivot, but use them to create an acceleration for how you move forward in the 21st century, because it's doable, because there are new norms that are coming out of this. And I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do you think we would have benefited with some disruptive thinking based on, these stimulus checks that now people may get, may not get? This seems like a real opportunity to solve a problem with technology.
Well, a very quick view, would be, let me just throw something out here. So let's look at this. So we use technology to create an intake system, right? And then we go through people's data, et cetera, and then they opt in or out or whatever. So what if instead of creating intake, went all the way to the end and created what we call an opt-in, opt-out. So it's like fundamentally, hey, Susan Reed, here's, and it's like the very next day when this thing is created, it asks me if I want to opt in or opt out. How does it know that? So it's going to know it because you're going to develop this thing over time. So you develop it from the beginning so that the intake literally evolves to a push button. This is just something off the cuff, an opt-in, opt-out solution. Okay, so this means that, the first thing I do is maybe I do an intake system. The second thing I do is taking all the data that we already have from people. We know, how much people pay in taxes, how much their income is, blah, 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 blah. And so we just take that, we combine it with some other resources, and then we can even project how much we're going to need. So then it comes to Susan and it says, hey, do you want this or not? Yes or no? Yes, boom, bam, it's in your account. So that would be a way that we would create the intake system based on its ability to evolve into all those steps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's also just like the simplest triage method that the government could have to find out who is the most vulnerable and who has the most need. If you have 300 million people and half of them opt out because they're fine, you at least are aware of the folks that, have an immediate need. That's a good idea.
Exactly. And that becomes a decision science, not just about metrics, but it actually becomes a predictable science. I don't want to go there, but it's an interesting concept in terms of how, but that's a perfect example, Jim, of how you can think this stuff through, and you don't just create this one-off answer. You create one that's going to go and reinvent the future. That's a perfect question. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, well, I'm just smiling now because this is kind of how I leave all my EdgeDweller sessions. Everybody comes in kind of concerned that they'll look bad not having a good idea, and they usually end up leaving kind of with an ear-to-ear grin because 6 people who didn't know, or 12 people who didn't know each other at the beginning of the day came up with some really brilliant solutions to problems that matter to them.
Yeah, very cool. So Wolf, I think we've, okay, here we go. I forgot we have to close. Okay, let me look at this. I was hoping we'd have another question. Okay. Okay, so 3 core takeaways from today. Really good discussions. Number 1, use advanced problem-solving methods to keep up with the speed of change. Remember, our way of thinking was post-industrial. We had different issues then, mass production. We're in mass customization today. You've got to think differently. We like to call it advanced problem-solving. Number 2, you create big ideas. We're referring to them in some cases as future states with higher and longer-lasting potential, and reduce the risk through a series of incremental launches. So that's really important. You got the big idea, you got to have the low risk. If you don't have it, it won't work unless you're a startup and you don't have anything to lose. And then finally is to extend the life of your technology solutions using the future state as your North Star. So don't just look at, hey, we've got this cool thing, we can improve it. Understand what it is in terms of the future that you're going to reinvent. What's the opt-in, opt-out government solution? And I'm going to start with intake. And how am I going to evolve that over time? That's the way to ramp up your technology solutions. Any comments, Jim? I mean, I think.
No, it's great. I'm really pleased to be with you today and not wearing a mask. It's been great to have a conversation without being masked. And certainly looking forward to getting together with you guys again to do more of these sessions.
Jim.
It's too much fun. It's too much fun.
Very cool. And thank you so much for your questions. As always, you can, I think there's a thing to text Wolf Reichert if you have any questions that we can answer. We've also done a series of videos on coronavirus. We figured people are just kind of sick of the coronavirus for the moment, but that you can tap into and catch us on LinkedIn or whatever. Yeah, we're happy to help answer any other questions. And thank you so much to TAG and Rebecca for pulling this together and making sure we didn't go way off track here.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank y'all too. Thank you for joining us today. And this will be re-recorded and on our channel, so please check it out.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.